Welcome, friends, to episode 253 of Color Magic, a Magic Gaming podcast where we talk about all types of issues that affect gamers at and away from their gaming tables and computers. I am your host, PowrDragn, and for 253 episodes, still got my main man, hopefully surviving that Texas heat. Brian Sonic, how's it going, dude?
It is going well. All the things are happening. We are just, as I saw somebody say on social media this past weekend, was the last weekend we will have, or every weekend after this football until 2025. So, yep, we
I feel
made
you.
it.
That's a good thing. See, for us, this is going to be the last night that the sun sets after 8 o'clock until 2025. Like such a random thing, but yeah, just you live in different places, so we will reach a point where our daytime hours of sunlight are from like 8:30, 9 o'clock until like 4:30. Like that's what winters are like, but we get the opposite for the summer, so it's kind of crazy. So yeah, hopefully y'all haven't had any issues with the heat. I got to travel to Chicago last week, and that was cool. I kind of brought my northeast or northwest weather with me, so it stayed about 75 degrees. It was nice, lots of walking around. Good city, them Chicago people. But I was telling you off the air though, I'm gonna put this out here for people so they can just be mad at me. Across the board, I'm just telling you. I know people from New York are gonna go to bat for this, and I don't blame you. I get it. I've had pizza in New York. It's good. The ceiling real high. Floor can be pretty low, but I'd say across the board, Chicago pizza was pretty good. I ain't gonna lie, Chicago pizza was pretty strong. Like average, I would say is better than New York average, and you can get a better variety of pizza. So people are gonna hate me, but there you go. I give them a reason to hate me this week. But all right, before we get into things, we got to remind you, go over to patreon.com/colormagic. You can support your boys and get a shout out, just like Ian Theory. That almost sounds like a wrestler name. That's actually pretty sweet. Like I would use that as a wrestler name. But yeah, get a shout out just like Ian. Thank you, Ian, for being a patron. But all right, that brings us to our lead story, which I've kind of been following this for a couple of weeks. And now we've known deep fakes are a thing, right? Like you can watch a video where somebody has superimposed somebody else's face over it, used a similar voice, and try to portray being somebody they're not, or make a video about something that didn't happen using somebody, right? Well, now you can do that on live video. See, this was always the issue with it before, is that it had to be something pre-recorded and kind of had to stage it and set it up, whatever. Now you can do it in real time. And the videos that are out there showing people using it look pretty good. I'm not gonna lie, like they look pretty damn good. There's some that was they were doing it with some presidents. I think there was one out there with Elon Musk that's going around, like some different ones that now don't be wrong, if you knew what to look for and like the hairstyle on the person and the background didn't really make sense or whatever, you could kind of tell it wasn't the person. But if you don't know those things,
That is the thing. How many people know exactly all of the things to look for?
yeah, dude, this is gonna get some people. Like, because here's the thing, like when it's in video, anything you question, they can't really refute, right? Like they kind of have to get all their stuff in the video and what's there is there. But when it's live, if the person knows enough about the subject, they can answer a bunch of questions. They can explain a bunch of things that you might otherwise think would be dead giveaways or whatever. So they're going to be able to fool a lot of people. And the tough part is when it's live, it's harder to regulate. Because when it's a video, it's had time to load, your systems can check things or whatever. But I don't know if technology is there right now for YouTube or Twitch or whoever to be able to, within the first couple of minutes, catch that on a live stream. Now, somebody can report it.
Yeah, because I remember Facebook
You
one
know?
time had a mass shooting that was being streamed for probably 10, 12 minutes with
Mm,
people constantly reporting, hey, Facebook, there's a mass shooting on your stream. I think it took about 12, 13 minutes real time before whoever is in charge of that got there and pulled all that stuff down. So
yeah, I
less things
remember
have
that.
less things have dramatically improved since then. And Lord knows I hope they have, but unless they have, no, they're probably gonna be able to catch a hey fake Elon Musk or whatever in mid fake press conference. I wouldn't think.
See, that's what I'm saying. Like, because let's say somebody makes an appropriately sounding account, so a lot of people don't know that it's a fake account. for whoever this mythical person is that we're using for the example. Say it's one of us, right? And somebody makes a similar PowrDragn sounding account and goes on there and wants to do some things. If you didn't know, like, it would be like you may not even report it for the first 5 minutes. You know what I mean? And then you're like, oh, wait, this isn't actually PowrDragn. What the hell? So then you go report it. I'm assuming it takes at least 5 minutes for it to reach the appropriate people. They have to double check some things, they verify, whatever. So you're going to be 10, 15 minutes in minimum before anything gets dealt with in a lot of cases. And depending on what the person's trying to do that's nefarious, whether it's just ruin somebody or politically, get some false statements
Yeah,
out there, whatever, right? It
make
could
you
be
endorse
anything.
somebody you really don't endorse or something along those lines. There's just all kinds of
Yeah.
nightmare scenarios.
I mean, I don't know, have me on there, I don't know, kicking kittens or something or whatever, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like somewhere out there, somebody's gonna be like, I saw PowrDragn kicking kittens on Twitch yesterday or whatever, like even though it was only up for 15 minutes. And obviously, I got 3 cats. I'm not gonna go around kicking kittens, but
Because
like,
once people see it, good luck convincing a certain segment of the population they didn't see what they believe they saw.
yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. Like once it's out there, they say it's like, no, it's true. I saw it. I saw it was live or whatever. Which, to be fair, up until this point, if you saw something live, it was probably accurate, right? Like that may not be the thing anymore. So now it's just like, oh, this is a whole other level of crap to think about. And what's funny, and we talked about this a little bit. Like I have for years, even before we got deep in the deep fake territory, deep into deep fake territory. That's a weird statement, but I had talked to my family about, man, we might need to have some like passwords for things. So if a scammer calls and tries to say something, or somebody tries to pretend to be one of us over the phone, whether it's a security question you can ask somebody that only the family would know, or some weird keyword y'all come up with or whatever, like we might genuinely be living in that type of society now. Like before it was like half joking, but hey, it might save my mom from getting scammed or something or whatever. Now it's like, hell, that might save me or my woman from getting scammed at this point. You know what I mean? Like we're in a weird world, man. Like, and I think for me, what makes this really bad is there's really no great use for this technology. It's mostly going to be nefarious stuff. I
Well, I mean,
think that's
the Hollywood isn't for the most part doing a good job of using it, but they're the ones who will go to bat and say we need this technology. From what I understand, Alien Romulus revived an actor, and it didn't look good, but in their mind,
that's
they
true.
still needed to do it.
But I feel like you could still do that with some use of CGI, holograms, whatever. Like we've had variations of it. So I don't know if you need to deep fake over an actual actor. Maybe it's easier for them. I don't know. Probably could be. But that would probably be the one use.
Yeah, and even if once it's out there, there's gonna always going to be one director that wants to do it that way and
Sure.
is adamant it won't work any other way. There are always different camps. Some people prefer to use the CGI. Some people would rather have practical effects. But once somebody makes a movie and actually feels like they've made money off of it, everybody that worked with them is going to go to bat for that use of it. And they obviously, if a court case comes up, they can afford to pay more than most of us are going to be able to pay.
You're not wrong. Yeah, I think for me, it's when I see new technology come about, and for anything, not even just video related, I always try to think about like what's the average use for society? Like what good can we do with this? And the more I think about this one, I'm like, we really don't have a lot of good that we're gonna do with this. Like it's mostly going to be people trying to do bad things. Whether, like we said, whether it's to politically try to get the wrong information out there, whether it's to try to ruin someone's reputation, scam somebody out of some stuff, get you to order some things or get your information because you think it's a Mr. Beast or whatever the case may be. There's going to be a lot of that. And we'd already seen it on small time levels. This, unfortunately, is publicly available, at least as when I went and looked. The code is just out online. You can just download it. I mean, it's not even a thing. So yeah, this is a tough one. A tough one. I don't know what's gonna come of it. We may never experience anything crazy in our sphere, but there is a lot of drama that goes down between people. And if somebody wants to do a little something, it's going to happen at some point. But yeah, at least we're in a community where it's more likely to be spotted, I would like to think. But who the hell knows, man? This is an ugly situation. But let's go ahead and get into the soapbox. All right, so this week we're going to talk about this a little later. Some stuff got banned finally, but with that came a discussion of should this situation even have existed to begin with? Like, was it avoidable if Woods of the Coast wasn't making cards for Commander? And this is like a weird, large philosophical conversation because, on the one hand, every single card is for Commander. You know what I mean? Like, you can play anything in the format. So you can't just be like, well, we're only making it for Commander. There's also some weird spaces, too, of like, what is a Commander card? What's a competitive card? What's a tournament card? What's whatever, right? And even that has its own split hairs of decisions. To me, though, I feel like there's really two bigger issues. The first is that there's just a lot of cards being made, and in the process, if you change anything late, it just may not be able to be tested and everything else. There's just not enough. There's just no way. I believe this week, and I'll talk about it here in a second, but I believe that Rosewater put out a statement basically saying that he believes that within a minute or two of cards being released, the community at large will have tested as much as they did during the entire process. Because you're talking 10 million plus people or whatever versus, hell, even if it's a big team, 100 people, right? It just doesn't scale the same, So that much I at least do get. The other part, I think, has to do with Modern Horizons. In this case, Modern Horizons 3 that the card came out in. We're talking about native, but it's really that if you're making cards in that set, the goal is going to be for many of them to replace stuff that already exists in the format. So that means a lot of cards are going to get pushed, or else people aren't going to buy those boosters, right? Because if they're not going to make waves in the format, why do I need to buy the cards? Well, then you do, and crazy stuff happens.
Yeah.
Like
Plus,
yeah, go ahead.
I've noticed talking to Rosewater and other people involved in design, it's almost like speaking to a time traveler. They know things
Yeah.
they're not supposed to know yet. So they even after I would ask him every question, he would stop and be like, "Wait," he had to think, "Is that card spoiled yet? Has that card been released yet?" He's probably 2 years ahead of the
Oh
timeline
yeah.
we're on. So in their mind, when they design something, the problem has probably already been solved. But the thing they're thinking about to solve the problem may not be out yet because they live in almost 2 to 3 different time periods in their head.
Well, yeah, and even what comes with that is the idea that they're testing within an environment that they believe to be true, a year plus in advance. Like, so they might find different decks than we find as a community. We find other things they don't find, and then we end up in a worse spot because they didn't discover something we discovered, right? And people will say, like, oh, well, they have some of the best game designers. They could find everything and whatever. It's like, dude, even within modern, you're talking about, well, I don't know, 10,000 game pieces or whatever, and they have to know every permutation of every deck. And it's just not feasible.
There's no way.
Yeah, that's just not real. Like, I get that people want that, but even if you made that team 1,000 people, like, eventually something's going to slip through the cracks. Like, there's just no way to get around that. But yeah, I think having to constantly push stuff for Modern Horizons is kind of part of the issue. And we've seen it even now. If you go back even 5 years ago, decks that were top tier aren't even seen anymore. I mean, legitly, a bunch of these decks are half or more Modern Horizons cards in some cases, over the 3 Modern Horizons sets.
Yeah, because it was designed to be a non-rotating format. It's Modern Horizons has made it a rotating format, essentially.
Yeah, basically every 2 years, there's going to be another Modern Horizons set, and there's going to be new cards out of the format. They're going to push some things out. And we're talking about like top tier stuff. Like, Jund, at one point, Bloodbraid Elf was a card that was bannable. Now, Bloodbraid Elf isn't even, I don't even think it's been in a single top 16 deck in any of the tournaments I've looked up recently. like just not even on the map, and that's crazy. So it's just like we're seeing it more and more, and I think that becomes more of the problem because I think it's easy to make a card that just does stuff in Commander or works with something else. I don't think they have to try too hard. I think some of it is okay, we want multiple groups to be able to play with this card, but we need it to be pushed so the product we're putting it in, Modern Horizons, is able to make a splash, which at least some number of the rares and mythics. Obviously, not all of them will, but some reasonable numbers so you can move booster packs because whether we like it or not, that's the bottom line, right? You're trying to sell product because you got to make money. So yeah, I think to me that's the bigger issue. It's just Modern Horizons is a problem more than building for Commander because again, almost anything can be a Commander card. It's easy to make something that just does something quirky and it could be in Commander, right? That's not really a design issue. I think the bigger issue is pushing cards to make them have an impact in Modern. And I think that's where Nadu unfortunately ended up, and it was insane. So we'll see. But yeah, we'll talk about the bannings here in a little bit. But let's go ahead and talk about what we learned this week because we're going to talk about two people for two very different reasons, and they're both kind of interesting. So, Brian, why don't you go first here?
I saw somebody ask the question: has there ever been, a comic book type situation where somebody had an accident that gives them superpowers? And this is an example. I knew of this person, but I never thought of it that way. There's a picture way back the first time the Cubs won the World Series. Mordecai, Three Finger Brown. He actually lost a couple of fingers in some kind of farm implement. And then even after that happened, he fell and broke his remaining fingers.
Oh,
And
geez.
yeah, and because of, kind of just the medicine of the time, they weren't even set right. So he ended up with three incredibly messed up fingers. But that gave him a baseball grip that nobody else could replicate. And for the most part, that nobody could hit. So yeah, he kind of did almost get a radioactive spider situation and developed almost superpowers from losing a couple of fingers and then having his remaining fingers be broken and reset improperly. So yeah,
That is crazy. Okay, so first off, the fact that the dude's name is Mordecai Brown, like,
well yeah,
like that sounds like superhero level stuff. Like somebody wrote that. But I couldn't even imagine, like, first losing a couple of fingers. I mean, hell, even when I heard about it recently, well, I say recently, I guess it's been like 8 years now, with like Jason Pierre-Paul or whatever,
yeah,
lost it to the fireworks or whatever. Even that sound kind of rough for a football player. So I couldn't
right,
imagine a baseball player having to throw not just with your fingers, but with crooked fingers. You know what I
right.
mean? Like that's wild. So like, did he end up being like a top end pitcher or
Oh
whatever?
yeah, I
Because
mean,
this,
literally, he
yeah,
is. The Cubs don't win the World Series without him. He was incredible. And then
that
that, of course, would end
is
up being the
crazy.
last World Series they won for what 100 and some odd
Yeah,
years.
something like that.
Yeah,
That is such a crazy story. Like, also imagine being like the coach or the manager or whatever when this guy shows up to training camp to try to get on
right.
the team,
You're
and you're
like,
like,
okay, fine, let this guy throw. We'll all have a laugh. Then nobody can actually hit anything he's throwing. Do you think
yeah, exactly. You're like,
trying to figure out some kind of way to throw the ball faster, slower, with a weird kind of spin on it, and he just naturally had a delivery that nobody could replicate.
yeah, because I'm just thinking like you. Like this dude shows up and he tells you like, hey, just so you know, I'm right-handed and I'm missing two fingers on my right hand or whatever, and I have a third one that's like a stump, like, and you're going, okay, I guess we'll let you throw,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
And then he comes out and just strikes out people, and you're like, you're hired,
Right.
right? That had to be a crazy day, man. Like stuff that historically, I wish I was a fly on the wall, you
Right.
know, just to know how that went because he's walking in there with all the confidence of like,
Yeah.
people ain't going to be able to hit my stuff, whatever. But everybody else is going, oh, we got to see this.
Right. It's almost like there was when I played a bases loaded back 30 some odd years ago now, there was a glitch you could do where after the pitcher got really tired and couldn't throw anymore, you could leave him in because he was at that point throwing so slowly that nobody could hit it. He was
Dude,
throwing it up there 30, 40 miles per hour. So even if you did hit it, you didn't get. There's no physics. You got no momentum from hitting a 30-mile-per-hour ball.
That happens though when they get late in the game and they don't want to waste pitchers for future games, and you have like the third baseman or the outfielder come in to pitch because they're only throwing like 70 miles an hour or whatever because that's all they can throw. You know, they're not pitchers. You know, but they end up getting a fair amount of people out. I mean, because their dudes
Yeah,
aren't
a
used
lot
to
of times
hitting.
their delivery's so bad, people are just laughing so hard they can't swing the
Yeah.
bat properly.
Ooh, okay. Sidetrack. I just think this is such a cool once in a lifetime thing that it's worth talking about. I don't know if you saw, and I wish I remember the guy's name, but they had a game that got canceled or not canceled, got stopped because of rain or whatever, weather issue. So they had to do a doubleheader and eventually like finish the game later. But, and it happened today, actually, I think while we're recording. But the dude who was at bat during the stoppage got traded to the team that they were playing against. So now the dude is going to be the only guy in baseball history to have started on one team at an at bat and then end up being the catcher for the out at bat he started because he's plays catcher. So he's catching for the other team, and the other team has to use a pinch hitter to replace him because he's no longer on the team.
That's crazy.
Isn't that wild?
That's part of why I love baseball right there. When else? No other sport could replicate that.
Yeah, literally will never happen again. Like no situation like that, to my knowledge, exists where the dude is playing for both teams in the same game, you know, a couple months apart or whatever, and literally catching for the same at bat he started. Like that's wild. But yeah, weird stuff. Okay, so in other news, this one was a little bit sad, but also kind of happy in a way. But Wally, famous Amos of the famous Amos cookies, passed a couple weeks ago. 88 years old, so really cool. And he apparently died around friends and family in Hawaii. I guess that's where he retired to, so that's pretty cool. But it was a little sad because you're like, man, you talk about a person who brought a lot of happiness to people, like them little cookies in the vending machine. Like, if there was a Hall of Fame of vending machines, them famous Amos cookies sold a lot in vending machines, dog.
No doubt.
Because I was thinking about that. Like, it got me thinking, what else would be in my like Hall of Fame for vending machine snacks? And I wasn't sure, but I was like, for sure, the famous Amos cookies are in there.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I don't like almost everyone that has snacks has some of them cookies in it. But yeah, it was pretty cool. They talked about, I read the article and just like how he started and how he came up with different flavors. And it was a really cool thing because I didn't know much about the person. You know, I just kind of thought this was just a name they made up because it sounded good on cookies. And, you know, the actual owner's name was something else. But no, it's actually named after the dude. So it's actually pretty sweet. Sad part, it was due to, I believe, like cognitive stuff, like Alzheimer's or something like that. So that part was pretty sad. But yeah, 88 years old, man. Like that's, I feel like it still feels a touch early, but 88, you at least had a good run.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
like
I saw
you
a lot
said,
of,
made so many people happy.
oh yeah. And I saw a lot of folks talking about, man, I'm gonna go out and get some of them cookies and just,
Right.
you know, in memoriam, eat some famous Amos cookies or whatever. So it's like, that's cool. You get to celebrate by eating some cookies, you know, like celebrate this dude's life. So, which is funny because now I'm like, man, maybe I need to go get some cookies after we're done. But yeah, really, really cool. But all right, let's get into some of our topics. I got to bring this up, Brian, because we talked about it 3-4 times, it feels like already. And I feel like this has happened for like the 8th time. But there was another Secret Lair that people were super excited about that basically sold out in the first hour. I don't like, and this one hurts the most because there's no excuse for it because it was a D&D Secret Lair. So they literally controlled everything. They own both licenses, like all the art, like they could have made this easier on people if they wanted to.
It doesn't seem like they care. You can't draw any other conclusion other than that they really don't care. I don't know what the benefit is, I guess, other than just people, maybe all the pub they get for watching people try to stab each other for these cards, but you would think they could have made more. I don't know. I don't understand it personally, but at this point, it's impossible to draw any other conclusion other than this is how they want it. I don't know why they want it this way, but this appears to be how they want. Because as you said, to the other projects, like, okay, yeah, it's a license. There could be a limit. They own everything here.
Yeah, 100%. As they say, soup to nuts. They own the whole thing. So if they wanted something changed, they could have. Right. So I'm with you. Like there has to be something in their business plan that says this is exactly what they want.
I don't get it. I don't understand why.
I'm with you. I don't get it because, and people have tried to say, oh, well, it's about FOMO and this, like, sort of. Like, I get that, yes, you want some number of people to not get it, so they'll always be interested to try to get it the next time. But when you're selling out in the first hour or two, you literally have the majority of your people who never had a chance to get it. Not some of them. Like, the perfect spot would be somewhere around 80, 85% that wanted or able to get it. And then you've got that 15 or 20%, they're like, I just missed out or whatever. Like I gotta set an alarm and get it next time or whatever the case is, right? That's what you want. Cause then you're maximizing your money, but you still have a small part of your audience that like is gonna have a little bit of feel bad they didn't get it and they'll want to rush to get the next one, right? So you always have people trying to get it. But in this case, I've talked to several people, and I mentioned it last time, like that don't even bother trying because you know you won't be able to get it. So they just don't care anymore. Like in this one, okay, so it was based around Baldur's Gate 3, right? So they did one with Asterion, one with Karlach, and I can't remember what the other ones were. There was some with like Beholders and some other things. The problem is, we all know if you've played Baldur's Gate or if you've looked at the internet, you know how popular Karlach is. Right? Like everybody knows the red demon chick or whatever. Everybody's big on her. Like anybody's played it, seen all the stories of people that tried to sex her up in the game and all that stuff or whatever, right? So they would even have to have known how popular this was going to be, right? Shocking no one. But I saw multiple people who said they immediately got on, like they were waiting in front of the computer, got into the queue, and it already had an hour wait in the first couple minutes when they got in. So it's like, if the people who immediately got in are already waiting an hour in the queue to place their order, like that's crazy. That's just genuinely crazy. And the thing that bothers me, even from a business perspective, I'm like, why wouldn't you just make more money? Right? That's the part I don't get. Like, because this has to be at least a few tens of thousands left on the table every time, which by the time we get to the end of the year could easily be hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not $1 million, right? Like, what company would not want to add that to their bottom line?
Unless they consider it a marketing expense, because
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about it because people couldn't get it. Everybody that covers Magic is gonna talk about it. Whereas if it just does, typical numbers, everybody wants to get it, can get it. We might not even have mentioned it. So maybe that's the rationale. I don't know.
And you could be right. I mean, maybe that's it. Just get the word out there, keep Secret Lair on people's minds. Like, quite possible. I mean, this could be some very high level marketing strategy that,
Because in the current scenario, it'll always sell out. There'll never be a time when this doesn't sell out. Some of the ones where everybody could get it when they wanted it have, I guess, not done as well, I'm assuming. I don't know. I don't have the numbers.
like, here's the thing. Like, and I said this in the beginning, the first couple of times under this new strategy, I went, okay, they're going to sell out because they haven't figured out the right numbers or whatever yet. That makes sense. But like I said, we are way into the year now, right? So you would have had plenty of time to up the numbers on these D&D ones, even if it's just a little bit each time, 5% here, 3% there, whatever, till you get into the sweet spot. But it seems like nothing has happened on any of these. And again, we have the Hatsune Miku has another one coming, I think, around the corner in a couple weeks. Like, there's more and more big name things that are going to be coming through Secret Lair. They're going to continue to have these problems.
They appear to have the scenario in place that they want. We just can't figure out why they want it this way.
Yeah. And the crazy thing to me is you could get some easy wins making more people happy, and you can add large chunks of cash to your bottom line, but they're just choosing not to. So there has to be a reason. I'm with you. I'm not going to sit here and say like they don't know what they're doing.
Because that's why.
Yeah, I guess so. That could be the logic too. I don't know, but realistically, there has to be a reason. I guess I'm not savvy enough to understand it or figure it out. I'll at least say that. But yeah, let's talk about those bannings we mentioned earlier. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull it up so I can make sure I give like the right information here. But not just Nadu. I mean, we talked about other cards, which was good because multiple things did get banned that needed to be banned. One of those things also being grief in multiple formats. So we had Amalia and Sorin in Pioneer, which I think surprised people a little bit, but Sorin Imperious Bloodlord allowed for turn 3 wins in some cases. And Amalia also allowed for the Abzan combo deck to be a thing. And it led to some pretty bad gameplay. So I kind of understand both of those as well. Modern saw Nadu and Grief get banned. Legacy had Grief get banned. Vintage surprisingly had a couple of cards get added to their restricted list, not necessarily banned, but Urza Saga the Land is restricted in that format as is Vexing Bauble. So I think that surprised people just a little bit. And on Arena, Amalia and Soren are also banned in Explorer, which is basically like Pioneer. So that kind of makes sense. So yeah, we finally got it. And on the one hand, people were excited, right? Hey, we can play these formats again that we've been ignoring because they've not been fun and whatever, which great. That's what you want to see, right? But then there was also, because we're nerds and we have to complain about everything, well, why didn't we also ban these other cards, right? So it's like, we got rid of the big ones. Why not these other ones? Though I will say this, the only card I think realistically that could also be added to the ban list is probably the One Ring. And I say that because it does have something, I believe like the last thing I looked at was almost 40% of the decks were playing it. And that's a pretty high number for any card, right? If it shows up really in more than like 25, 30% of the decks, you start asking questions. You know, when you're encroaching on 40%, it's like, this is kind of played everywhere. Like, what are we doing with this? But still serviceable, not too crazy. I think the thing now is just going to be, do the energy decks take over? I think that's going to be the next question. So remains to be seen. Obviously, those bands just got announced this week. We haven't really seen any major tournaments with it yet that had, some significant number of players. So maybe in 2 weeks, we'll see how we feel about it. If they chose the right cards. They did take a long time. So I'm hoping maybe internally they tested some things. They looked at what the formats look like without the cards. Maybe they already feel safe with just these being the only ones necessary. And if so, great. We'll find out in a couple of weeks, though. But all right, we also have some bad news to talk about because it's been a minute since we had, how do we want to classify this? Some corporate debauchery is the best way to describe this. But yeah, over at Bungie. And to be fair, I don't think we've had to cover Bungie too often on the show. But this time this is pretty bad. One of their directors, let's see if I can get the person's name right here. Chris Barrett was the person's name. Was fired from Bungie for what they're classifying as inappropriate conduct. And according to all the reports, inappropriate is the nice way to put this.
Yeah. Jesus.
Apparently, this dude was, I don't, for lack of a better terms, harassing, but
That is pretty much the
sexualizing.
term.
Like, I'm just like, there's a bunch of terms that fit this. But apparently, okay, he was, I would say just dating in the office, but that wouldn't even be a problem. The problem is he apparently was sending inappropriate texts. He was trying to get private meetings with some of these victims, I guess the best way to describe it. He was trying to use his influence to claim that, like, oh, I can get you a better position, or I could help your career, or, that type of thing. Just like, dude, what are you doing? And I'll tell you right now, directors make good money at
Yeah.
tech companies. I mean, you're talking for real 6 figures. So I don't, like, it's not worth the risk, man. It's just not. But the fact that they said everything I found on the internet, every article report said at least 8 women came forward.
Yeah.
So there's no telling what the number could be. I mean,
Exactly, because a lot of people aren't comfortable sharing their experience for obvious reasons. You don't
Yeah, and they
want
don't want to be caught in the crossfire, right? They don't want to be doing all the interviews and be called in to answer questions for HR and all that. Like some of them probably quit their jobs and move just to get away from it.
exactly. And
So
again, if
yeah,
somebody has become a manager, as you said, somebody that's a director has been in the industry for, I'm sure, years, so there's no telling how long this behavior has gone on. Because people just, might as well say, criminals, for lack of offenders, they usually don't just wake up one day and say, "I think I'll start living outside the bounds of polite society." It's a behavior that is constant. They are always pushing the limits. They are always attempting to see how much they can get away with. And
yeah, and again, I don't, if you're just trying to date somebody because you're genuinely interested in them or whatever, like fine, whatever. Probably not best to do it at work, especially
if
especially
you're a
with any type of
supervisor,
direct reports.
you
You
pretty much
don't do that.
you can't do it because there's a power imbalance.
Exactly.
Nobody can feel, they're always going to wonder, like, oh, well, I said no to this person. Like, did that adversely affect my career? So it's just the power imbalance makes it a
Yeah.
situation that can't work.
Now, I'm kind of okay if it's other departments that you don't touch or whatever. Fine, y'all just work under the same umbrella of a company name,
Even still,
whatever.
somebody that's
Oh
a
yeah,
director
I
is
get
just,
it. No, don't get me wrong. But I'm at least more lenient in those cases of passing judgment. But if these are people you directly influence their career, like you can't. Like that's not even. And then just like you're saying, like it's could have been going on for who knows how long. I mean, 8 people coming forward is a lot. I mean, and we don't know. I didn't see anything that said, the first person, said it happened 5 years ago. Another person said it happened last week. I don't know any of those details. But the fact that his statement, by the way, I'm going to read his statement he put out. It says, I feel that I've always conducted myself with integrity and been respectful and supportive of my colleagues, many of whom I consider close friends. I never understood my communications to be unwanted. I would never I would have never thought they could possibly have made anyone feel uncomfortable. If anyone ever felt that way about their interaction with me, I am truly sorry. I'm like, you can't believe I get it. It's PR. You
yeah,
probably had a
he ain't even
lawyer
right
told you put
that.
out a statement, but like, come on. Like nobody's gonna believe that. Not when it's 8 people, dog. Like, come on. That'd have been like Tiger Woods going like, well, no matter what comes after that, we're gonna be like, nah, dog. Like this is a tough one. Now they did
Every
say,
that's
go ahead.
ever
Mhm.
asked a person out and had it not turn out right knows that situation is awkward forever after. That's even
Yeah,
if it's just
yeah,
somebody just you approached randomly at a club. For it to happen at work, that makes people uncomfortable. Who doesn't
yeah.
know that makes people uncomfortable? Ask when you ask somebody out and they say no, it's uncomfortable for both parties. Has been since dawn of time. Everybody knows that.
And but I will say this: like, if you had only asked somebody out, okay, maybe. But there is reports of multiple flirtatious texts, things that are over the line. Again, trying to exert influence.
As you say, it's
Like
all PR speak. It's written for him.
yeah. So there's a lot of issues going on here. That's like, dude, you had to know you were over the line. Like the minute you try to flex your power and influence,
Yeah,
you're over the line. You know what I mean? Like any of the other stuff, we're just like, hey, I'm just interested. Maybe you want to go out sometime, whatever. Maybe that is truly innocent.
yeah. I can help your career is not it's not
Exactly.
romantic. It's a proposition,
Exactly.
essentially.
That's exactly it.
It's almost
Proposition
like
is
an
the right
exchange
word.
of service at that point. So it's not the foundation for any kind of decent or meaningful relationship.
Exactly. And I think that's the issue. I think your word to use there of a proposition is
Yeah.
correct, right? I think that's it.
And he
Because
knows that.
yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Once you have those texts and emails that are public that state that, you've lost any defense you were going to have, right?
Exactly.
Because you're now saying, I don't know if I could get this person to date me or sleep with me or whatever the case is. So I'm going to offer this as an option to try to make this situation happen. Right? So you already know you're
Yeah.
doing something inappropriate at that point. And trying to influence somebody probably into a thing that they're not 100% down with, to be honest.
Yeah,
If
because
we're being
but you
real.
also know they don't want you. You
Yeah. So that makes it even more weird. So it's just like, yeah, dude. And rightfully so, Bungie was like, nah, we'll finish the investigation later, but you're fired.
yeah.
Like, so no
Yeah,
surprise. He's
investigation has just what we've heard is already enough. The fact that he's with even in the PR statement has admitted to doing that much, like yeah, you got to go.
yeah, Sony seems like they backed up everything Bungie's done, typical statement of like, we take all this stuff seriously, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, like this dude, he's just a mess. And it's been a minute since we've had to report something from the big tech companies in the gaming space. Seems like after 2 years ago, they kind of started getting their act together, but there's always somebody in the system. And unfortunately for Bungie, this time it was one of your folks. So yeah, anyway, that story's out there. But let's get to the dinner table here because there's an interesting conversation that I don't know if this has a simple answer. But the question is, why do we feel there aren't more prominent black personalities in gaming? And I don't know, man. Like from my perspective, it just feels like this is like you talk about multi-layered. I feel like I'm be peeling things back for 20 layers. But I'll start at there's just some parts of the gaming community that until recently hadn't heavily I guess penetrated black culture to start with. Right? We both talked about it. When we were growing up, there weren't black people playing the games and doing the things we were doing. Even now we have people are still excited to see a black magic content creator. Like that's still a different thing for them. So that's largely part of it because we had mentioned before, like some communities did have that penetration. We're talking about Yu-Gi-Oh! For whatever reason, has a large minority population, right,
So
in
I
their
think
player
part of
base.
it was, and I think Lawrence Harmon pointed this out, is that Yu-Gi-Oh had an anime that was
Yep.
readily accessible on everybody's TV.
Yeah. Every
You
day
had a
after
chance,
school.
yeah, you had a chance to watch Yu-Gi-Oh, like you said, every afternoon, every Saturday. It was free advertising.
Yep. People watch that in Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah, Wizards has been trying to get into that space, but they have not been able to get a product out. Whereas, yeah, that's where a lot of black people learned about Yu-Gi-Oh, and many black people learned about card gaming from Yu-Gi-Oh. And
Hmm.
Magic really doesn't have that same outreach, that same product.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely better now. Now that you have more personalities that are out there and you're seeing like Joe Johnson being used to host things for Wizards and stuff like that. So like it's becoming more normal and starting to penetrate that space, but definitely still a long way from where it needs to be. It's different though, I think, when we talk about video games because the fighter game community has also a large minority population. Like I feel like that's always been a thing in fighter games, especially with Street Fighter, Smash Bros. Like couldn't tell you why, but it's definitely been that way as long as I can remember. Hell, I still remember playing other black dudes and Hispanic dudes at the Street Fighter 2 cabinets, right, in the arcade. So, like, I don't know. It's just always been a thing. I couldn't even tell you why. You would think it would just, by culture, you would think it would be more sports game stuff, but a lot in the fighter game community. No real reason why. It just is what it is. Like, what would you attribute it to, though? Like, just this
I
whole
mean, I
situation.
I do think we got to look at we got to look at the racisms, the
Yeah.
sexisms, and then I guess in my case, the ageism, because I told you about how I applied for something where literally the job description is, "Hey, what do you know about WWE 2K and Madden?" And my response was, accurately, literally everything. More than is, I was putting my resume together, trying not to sound arrogant, but I mean, yeah, okay. And then then I don't get the job, and I'm just sitting here going, okay, you probably gave it to the other person ranked in the top 50 in WWE that applied, I guess. you know?
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point because I feel like you have more older. I guess I'll just say, whites generally on the older end tend to still get a lot of space in the gaming community where you don't have a lot of the older black personalities getting space in the communities, which is kind of interesting because some of the only ones, like in our case, that exist in some areas are going to be older, right? So you kind of have to have them there to be part of it to help bring up that next generation or whatever, which doesn't exist in some communities. That's kind of a good call out there. Yeah, and I think really up until a few years ago, in many cases, I don't know how much it was a major priority for a lot of companies. I mean, on some level, if you're making money, you kind of go, yeah, everything's good. We're making money, whatever. And you haven't really stopped to think about all the demographics involved. And when you start looking into it, and then we have a lot of social issues pop up between like politics, the George Floyd thing, blah, 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 right? You start looking into it and going like, huh, yeah, we don't have a lot of black employees. Like we don't have a lot of black people on camera. Oh, wait,
Yeah.
we don't have a lot of black writers. Like maybe we should hire a few. You know,
Or Activision actually putting out a statement basically saying, "Hey, we don't need to, we don't need a diversity person. We feel like we got to figure it out, but you have virtually no no minority employees. We're working on it. We swear."
yeah, that's part of it too. It's just like the direction of all of it. And yeah, like we've seen diversity coordinators being brought on for places, diversity directors, whatever title you want to give them. And that seems to be helping, you know, and some companies are following through. They're supporting different projects. They're trying to push different, creators of different backgrounds. They're doing partnerships with different people to raise profiles of different folks. So like we're seeing it and I think it's coming along and it'll change over the next probably 5 to 8 years, but I think it's a process. Like I don't think we magically go from a bunch of companies having 1%, in their employee base or player base to magically having 10%. Like it just there's cultural shifts that have to happen, unfortunately, and it's just things happen over a long period of time. I think we take some of that for granted because I've talked about it before. The games we play and the things we've been fans of seem like they've just been around forever, in our lifetimes. But that also comes with time because like some of that is culturally within our own games that have developed over 20 years, 30 years. D&D is 50 years, whatever. And some of that is going to take a while to shift. I don't think there's really an easy answer. I think there's a lot of levels to it, to be honest. Of all things, right? Not just black personalities, but we're talking about more women, more trans folks, more Asian folks, more Hispanic folks. Like I think to get that level of diversity has to be intentional and you have to put in the effort for it. And it's just going to be a while.
I saw somebody post a great thing where they were talking about a woman wearing a T-shirt of an older rock band, and guys saying, name 5 of their songs, and somebody says, every time, every time a guy does that, you ask them, name 5 women who trust you.
Yep. I
Like,
for real.
yeah, that's
That
that's
that
an
and that
excellent response.
5 women that trust you that you ain't related to. Right? That's probably even a harder question.
Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned that because and I don't know if I told this story before. This was at MomoCon in Atlanta in 2015. No, it would have been 2016 or 2017. I was there with a couple of different Wizards employees because we were speaking on a diversity panel in Wizards and in gaming and whatever, right? And while we're walking around the show floor, Allison Lures was with us, who was on the writing team and stuff for R&D. And a dude, no good reason at all, comes up to us because she's got like the one of the Wizards hoodies with like the Magic logo and whatever. And it's like, oh, well, can you tell me anything about Nicol Bolas and blah, blah, blah? And I'm like, we're just walking along having a conversation. I'm like, my first thought is, who the hell are you to even come up to
Right.
somebody out of nowhere and try to quiz them? Two, I'm like, she's about to blow this dude up because she's literally a writer for D&D for Magic. And I'm like, oh, this is about to be a thing, right? And I started to intervene, and she's like, no, I got it. And like literally just rambled on some stuff. And the dude just looked defeated. Like he thought he was going to be doing something. And I was like, God, you are an idiot. Like why? Why would you even think that's an appropriate thing? You know? And hell, to be honest, I don't care if you know about it or not. Maybe you thought the logo was cool. Great. You bought a thing that
Yes, we
supports the
want
thing that I
we,
like.
we want more people to be fans of the things we like. It's
Yeah.
just,
Like, I don't walk around when I see somebody wearing a Dallas Cowboy shirt and be like, "Oh, so what do you know about the 1963 Cowboys?" or whatever, right? Like, what can you tell me about the Immaculate Reception or whatever? Like it's like who like why would that even be a thing? Like, I don't care. Support who you want to support. If you hell, I'm sure I've bought things because I thought, "Oh, this is a cool looking shirt." And I don't know that much about the subject. Hell, I'll tell you right now, I enjoy the hell out of listening to The Offspring. I can't name a damn person in the band. I could sing the lyrics to a bunch of their music. I don't know a damn thing about them. I just enjoy the music. That's it. I've never even been to an Offspring
yeah,
concert.
I mean and really that's enough. We got to start letting people enjoy things without giving them headaches about it. I swear.
Yeah, it's just, I'm with you. That's just a weird line of thought. To one, come up to a stranger and
Yeah.
just out of the blue interrupt what they're doing and just impromptu quiz for no reason. Like, that's weird. But what does it matter if they can or can't answer? Like, what? I guess my thing is, like, what do they genuinely expect to happen? Right? Like, they don't answer your question correctly and you say something insulting and walk off, and they're still going to go on about their day. You know what I mean? Like, you didn't change anything because
What
you
were
did
you?
that.
Were you expecting to get like, oh no, my life is a lie? Is that what you were expecting to get? You're
Yeah,
not
like,
getting
oh,
that.
you're right.
Yeah.
I got to go change this right now. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like what? And then, like in that case with Allison, she answered it beyond correctly, like a bunch of crap. I like if he'd have quizzed me, I'd have got way more wrong than she was spouting stuff I didn't know nothing about. Right. So, you know, in reality, I'm the one that knew less about Nicol Bolas. Like for real. Like, and then what do you do after that happens? Right. Because now you're just egg on your face looking stupid. Because she now just for real just dressed you down with magic lore and you ain't got nothing to say but just to walk off with your head down now. So like that behavior is just dumb. But yeah, overall, I just think it's culturally changing. And even now, I would say even within Magic, we're seeing actually there's been days if you go on to Twitch of the top like 6 or 7 streamers, sometimes like 4 of them will be women. So like turning the corner. Some of the hardest working creators right now are some of the women in the Magic space. So that's awesome. And you do have a few black personalities starting to get some time, and that's pretty cool. So just it comes with time, right? You have to work through it. You have to support these people. And again, I always tell people, be the change you want to see, right? If you think more of these people need to be pushed or presented, share their content when they post stuff. Go comment on their videos, watch their stuff when they post it or listen to it or whatever in our case, as a podcast or whatever, right? You got to do the activity you want to see more of. That's how all this works. You can always put the onus on somebody else, but if you ain't doing your part, it's just going to take that much longer. But all right, Brian, where can people find you on the social media machines?
All right. I am Brian Sonic on Twitter and YouTube. You can read about a lot of stuff we're talking about over at gamesided.com.
You can find me everywhere at PowrDragn, PowrDragn. Lots of stuff coming up on YouTube. And I even recently did a video on using AI to try to build magic decks. You go over and check that out. But as always, wherever you are watching or listening, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Please remember to take care of yourselves and your family. Remember to be awesome. And most importantly, be awesome to each other.